Hey folks, this is Kalani. We have some huge class changes this week, including a lot of nerfs to various classes and specs. There's also a huge change to the Valor Stones currency, which will make it much easier to gear up in the new season. The entire bank system is getting overhauled in patch 11.2 and will end up with a good chunk more space than before, with a much neater layout and fewer storage areas to manage. Then we also have more information about what we'll see at Gamescom relating to the new Midnight expansion, and there are some changes to how rewards are going to work in Legion Remix. There's a lot to talk about, so let's break it all down in this week's WoW News video. Now before we jump in, be sure to hit that like button and subscribe so you never miss another video. First up this week, we have a huge change to Valor Stones. Valor Stones will no longer be reset upon the start of a new season, so you can farm Valor Stones now and start the new season with a stockpile ready to upgrade your new Season 3 gear. If you really want to go crazy with it, you could even farm up Valor Stones on all of your alts. You can take 2,000 Valor Stones per alt you have into Season 3, and then if you run out on your main, you can just transfer them over to your main and pay the penalty. It's totally up to you, though I will say crests are almost always the actual restriction on how fast you can upgrade your gear, especially in a new season. So personally, I wouldn't really worry too much about Valor Stones as a whole. I will say that the Greedy Emissary event does provide an insane amount of Valor Stones if you're still farming that for some of the unique rewards from the event. Each box you open contains a good amount of Valor Stones, so that's probably one of the fastest ways to stockpile them before the start of the new season. Something to be careful of is that even though Valor Stones are not being reset, certain items that contain or generate Valor Stones when used may still expire with the start of the new season. Items like Void Touched Valor Stones or Crimson Valor Stones usually become vendor trash with the start of the new season. We don't have any clarification on whether or not that will still be the case, so keep your eyes peeled for any future info on what other Valor Stone related items might be useful to hoard as we head into Season 3, and which ones you'll need to use before the patch arrives, unless you just want to end up vendoring them in Season 3 for a couple of gold. Now this change has also brought up a very common question once again. Do Valor Stones actually add anything to the game? It seems like you're either pretty much full on Valor Stones or empty, depending on what you're currently working on, but the gear upgrade restriction will always be crests as the system currently stands. Crests are required for all important gear upgrades, and they're strictly limited by the crest caps until about halfway through the season. Even if Valor Stones were to be entirely removed from the game, you wouldn't actually gear up any faster as long as the crest caps remain in play, so Valor Stones just kinda act as a busy work reward. It's nice that we can now transfer them between alts and we can go into a new season with a full stack of the currency, but honestly, I don't think it actually really adds that much to the game as a whole. I wouldn't be surprised if they do remove Valor Stones at some point in the future, but what do you think? Do Valor Stones add value to the season as a whole, or do you think the game would be better off if they were removed? Let me know what you think in the comments section below. Now moving on, patch 11.2 will also bring us a huge change to the entire bank system in-game. To start with, the Regent Bank and Void Storage are being completely removed and everything is being rolled into an updated bank interface that basically just copies the Warband Bank or Guild Bank window. So your character bank will now consist of tabs instead of a bunch of bag slots for you to fill in. Each tab will have 98 slots of storage and we can unlock 6 tabs total. These tabs do have a gold cost tied to them, but it's much lower when compared to something like the Warband Bank. The tabs will cost you 100, 500, 1,000, 2,500 and 5,000 gold. So the most expensive one is only 5k gold, and you're looking at a grand total of about 9,000 gold to unlock all of this space. The bank window has felt pretty outdated for a while now, and I think the addition of Warband Banks just kind of put everything into perspective, so I'm super happy that we're getting this update. Not only does this make your bank easier to use and organize, but we're actually getting some extra space as well. If you add up all of the slots from the old bank, the Void Storage and the Regent Bank, you get about 538 slots of storage for all your hard-earned hoarded goods. In the new update we'll have 588 slots, so that's a good chunk more space for all of your potentially useful random random items. This also shouldn't change anything in terms of crafting from your bank, as you can already craft from your Warband bank and Regent bank with necessary items, and you can sort your new bank tabs to quickly deposit Regents just like you could in the Regent bank, so really it's just an improvement overall by the looks of things. Now, as for items that are currently in other storage areas, when the patch goes live, any items in your character's bank, Regent bank or Void storage will be automatically moved to the new bank system on your next login. So this should happen automatically without any actual input from you as a player. However, there were quite a few problems with guild banks and warband banks at the start of this expansion. Some folks lost a lot of items, with no real recourse for getting that stuff back. So if you were worried about losing specific items of import, whether it's special transmog, unobtainable fun items, or really anything that you care about, it may be a good idea to withdraw those items manually before the patch goes live and hold them in your bags as the patch update happens. I would pay particular attention to anything in your Void storage if you do use that, because that system works a little differently. So to me, that's the prime candidate for something to go wrong. Fingers crossed this is all unnecessary and the update goes smoothly, but if you have some items you would hate to lose, it's not a bad idea to play things a little safe. But either way, this bank update looks great in my opinion, and it's nice to have all of your storage options centralized, and we're even getting some more hoarding space to go along with it, so that's a win-win in my book. That's not all that's new for patch 11.2 this week. We also had several rounds of class tuning, including specific tuning for healers and quite a lot of nerfs for certain classes and specs. There were 3 different sets of class changes to go over, and some of them actually revert changes from earlier in the week. So bear with me as we patch this together and go through this week's class adjustments. For Death Knights, the damage of Mograin's Death and Decay was increased by 50%, and several abilities will now interact with Undeath to increase its damage further. For Frost specifically, they're going to see a 12% damage nerf across the board. I guess all of those damage buffs in a row went a little too hard, so they're reining things back in a little bit here. A double-digit blanket nerf is never something you want to see, but Breath of Sindragosa will last a bit longer now when you consume Killing Machine or Rhyme effects, and its damage has been increased by 20%, so less damage from most sources, but more damage from Breath of Sindragosa, especially if you can keep it rolling for a good chunk of time. For Unholy, Legion of Souls can now summon an Undead Magus. Several abilities and passives, including your Mastery, will be boosting the damage of Lightning's Undeath and Unholy Blight, so there's some more synergies being added in between those abilities. Druids just have a couple of quick updates. The Elun's Chosen 2 set was buffed up for Guardian, so Star Surges cast by the set bonus were increased to 160% effectiveness, up from 65%, so that's a pretty big buff and potential damage right there. For Keeper of the Grove Balanced Druids, the 4 set will now store 3% of damage done, and its max storage was cut in half, and its duration was reduced to 15 seconds, down from 45. And then Feral has a decent buff to Saberjaws, that was buffed up to a 60 and 120% increase, up from 40% and 80%, but it won't affect PvP combat. Evokers have a couple of changes as well. The Squadron, summoned by the new 2 set bonus, will no longer pyre enemies behind you. Their pyre damage is increased by 40%, and you can no longer slow down a deep breath to walking speed. These changes were supposed to address a problem with the new set bonus that encouraged you to breathe for as long as possible, even if you weren't actually hitting any mobs. But some of this was actually changed just a day or so later in the next round of updates, which we'll see in just a moment. So Flame Shaper's Essence Bomb healing was cut down to 250% of spell power, down from 500%, so that's a pretty hefty nerf by the looks of things. A change to Consume Flame was reverted as it was causing other problems, and there's a bug fix for Consume Flames as well. For Devastation, Essence Bomb damage has been increased by 33%, and Inner Flames was nerfed down to a 15% increase from a 25% increase. And here we see the other 2 set bonus changes for the Squadron. They will now be limited to 8 pyre casts, the pyre damage was increased by 25%, and they can actually cast behind you. So they ended up going with a restriction on pyre casts instead, which should just make everything more reliable in general. And then for Preservation, Temporal Anomaly Absorption was increased by 230%, but it will diminish even faster beyond 5 targets. Hunters made the list this week as well. For Dark Ranger Beast Mastery, Black Arrow damage is up 20%, Phantom Pain damage share was increased to 20%, and the Bell Tolls damage bonus was increased to 4%. For Pack Leader, Better Together now increases Tip of the Spear bonus by 15%, Dire Summons will further reduce the cooldowns of Kill Command and Raptor Strike for survival, the 2-set bonus was nerfed slightly, and the 4-set bonus now works on the Dawnbreaker ship, because that is going to be very important as we head into Season 3. Sentinel had some quick adjustments to the new set bonuses, including a buff to the 4-set bonus damage for aim shot, and then for Beast Mastery specifically, they're going to see a 3% damage nerf across the board, which is never fun to see, and Huntmaster's Call has been nerfed. The duration was knocked down to 10 seconds, the haste buff was cut in half, and the pet damage buff was cut down to 4% as well. Now in the second round of changes, Beast Mastery was noted as having another 3% damage nerf across the board. I'm not entirely sure if that's actually in addition to the other one, or if it's just the same note repeated, but what is new is a 10% nerf to all abilities and damage for marksmanship. That is going to sting for sure. Now, mages have some quick buffs for every spec. Arcane will see a 3% damage boost across the board, Fire is going to see a 3% damage buff as well, but then Pyroblast and Flame Strike are also getting some juicy 30% buffs on top of that, and then Frost will see a very welcome 10% buff for all of their abilities and damage. So I guess mages weren't doing all too well on the PTR so far. Moving on to the monks, the recent update that increased their Mystic Touch debuff up to an 8% bonus has been reverted, so that physical damage increase debuff they provide isn't changing as we head into patch 11.2. There was a lot of discussion about this change specifically, and I guess the dev team have decided the buff just wasn't worth the extra headache that it may have caused long term, so it's gone for now. Monks did receive some other additions this week as well. For Master of Harmony, Harmonic Surge damage has been increased by 80% for Brewmaster, and its healing has been increased by 15% for Mistweavers. Brewmaster has quite a few bug fixes, which is always nice to see. It's never fun when bugs get in the way of your gameplay. And then for Mistweaver, Shaylin's gift healing has been increased by 20%, Vivify Direct healing will see an 80% buff, but it will no longer be increased in PvP, and then Chi Harmony now increases healing taken by 25%, down from 50%. They will also catch a 5% nerf across the board for all of their healing as well this week though, so it's not all good news, I'm afraid. Now, Paladins have quite a lot of changes this week. The Lightsmith set bonus has quite a few adjustments. Lesser weapon healing was increased by 100%, its damage was reduced by 66%, and the Bulwark Absorb was increased by 100%. For Protection Lightsmith, Hammer and Anvil is now cast at 40% effectiveness when activated by Hammer of the Righteous or Blessed Hammer. Holy Sacred Weapons also now prioritize healers when cast without a target, and the Templar set bonus saw some quick adjustments as well. Now, Retribution actually has a lot of buffs this week. Ret wasn't feeling all too hot after the Divine Hammer nerfs, so I'm not too surprised to see some buffs come their way. Templar's Verdict is getting a 10% damage boost, Divine Arbiter is up 25%, Judgment damage has been increased by 30%, Blade of Justice will see a